Hey, how we doing, everybody? I've got a new lathe chuck here, a little bit of a new project. This is the SHARS 8-inch scrolling, adjustable, I should say self-adjusting, self-centering lathe chuck. And it's a nice chuck. It's very well made. Uh, my parts are laid out right here. I've got the scroll and bevel gear taken out of it, and the reason that I did that I took this thing apart, is because it felt very gritty. You can see the pinions here. Everything's very well made. It's all machined really well. I'm going to bring it up a little closer. Good parts, good quality parts. These gears are all hardened and machined. They're not like a sintered, powdered metal or anything. I'll show you the crown. Good machining performed on here. The teeth are all profiled properly. They've surface ground everything, and the scroll is done very nice as well. The problem that I have with it is that when they put it together, they didn't clean anything. They just basically took the raw parts and left a bunch of grit inside of it. Grinding grit, really, is what it is. These removable jaws right here. I've got these things pulled off, and you can probably see some of the grit that's in there as well. That's how it came right out of the package. So, again, good machining, but not very impressive with the end result, where they should have cleaned all this garbage out of this thing, because if somebody just popped this out of the box and started using it, this grit is gonna just tear the chuck apart. It's gonna, it's like having grinding compound on your parts and just working it in. It's gonna just eat it up. So I ripped this thing down, and I've got it taken apart, and I'm gonna clean it up, and I'm gonna put it back together. It's a great chuck. Before I took it apart, I looked the whole thing over, and they did a good job on it. The body here is very well made. There's you can see the grit down inside of there as well. So, not very impressed with that. I mean, this isn't a $550 chuck or anything like that. It's not a it's not a buck, or something else that you might pick up that's nice. See, like right here. Let's see if I can get this into the camera shot. Right by my finger, right in front of it, there's some grinding grit. I'll wipe it out. And that's what's in there. You can't have that crap inside of an assembly of moving parts. It's just gonna tear them up. That's not grease. That's oil with grit in it. So, let me see if I can get this up a little bit closer to the camera. Well, whatever. But that's what I'm doing here. And you see my my phone I've got in the background right here, that's what I have linked up to the GoPro. I'm wearing the GoPro on the headgear, and I'm using the phone as my display so that I can see what's going on. So I'm just cleaning this thing up, and I'm gonna put it back together. And once I get it back together, I've got this is the backing plate right here to it. This is, I mean, even this is a mess, you know. So it's gonna be cleaned up. I'll clean all of it up. I'll you know, make sure everything's good to go, and I'll put some nice moly base grease in there, and I'll get it all up and going the way that it's supposed to be. But anyways, what I've got here, these are the movable jaws, and of course the removable portion of the jaw that you can take off, and you can turn it either way so that you can use it as an inside or an outside. But I went down to my steel shop and I picked up myself some a couple of 1/2 inch thick, just mild steel discs here, and you know, I'm not sure whether I'm going to be able to just use one, if it's going to be thick enough, or I'm going to have to double them up or whatever. But I'm going to make a backing plate for the chuck to go onto my lathe. So that was the original project, was to work on these and make that plate. But of course, once I got messing around with the chuck over here, I didn't care for the action of it too much, so I stripped the thing down, and you know, that's no big deal. I can handle cleaning this thing up and putting some good grease in there. I don't care. I mean, if I did pay $500, $600, $700, whatever dollars for this chuck, I'd be pissed. But you know, fact of the matter is, I paid $160 for it. So I suppose I can't complain too much. You know, you get what you pay for. It's machined very nicely. It's well made. You know, they just didn't do the cleanup work, the final fit and finish of it, I guess. So, hey, whatever. You know, I can deal with it. So that's what I got going on. I'm gonna be fooling around with this, and here I'm gonna adjust the camera a little bit. So I tilt my head down so much. Oh. Apologize for the screwball's views right now. I've got the camera here on my head, and I'm trying to get this thing so I don't have to look down the whole time. But alright, we'll call it good there. But I figured I'd kinda get a little video shot of this here, what's going on, and I'm gonna just go ahead and pause the camera for a little bit while I clean these parts up, and I'll turn it back on when I go ahead and start reassembling it. Okay, so I've got the parts all cleaned up. I actually had to do a fair amount of deburring on some things. This crown gear scroll, some of the teeth had some pretty good burrs in them on the crown gear itself, which I didn't see right from the start, but they did. And I had to get in there with a triangular file and smooth the burrs off. The little pinions here, they were okay. They didn't have any burrs or any junk or anything like that. The inside, the body of the chuck, it was just really dirty. There was a lot of grit in there. It needed to be cleaned out really well. You know, I used kerosene on all this stuff, cleaned it up, blew it out, sprayed it down with brake clean, and then blew it out with air. And right now I've got the parts all greased up. I've got some good bearing grease I've used in there, you know, keep the gears and everything lubricated, and if I want to take this back apart, do any other kind of work to it. But you know, here we go. This crown, it just drops in there in the back side. You gotta kind of get it even as you're going. So let's just drop down on top of the center of the hub here. There we go. So, just wipe my hands off. Covered in grease. I'm just going to give it a little tap with a soft hammer and a screwdriver. Not on the gear teeth, but right on the very inside edge. I just want to make sure it's seated. Okay, so there we go. That's seated into place. Before I took it all apart, I just center punched everything, gave it a number so I can put the parts back where they came out. See, let me get in here. Little center punch marks. Okay, so anyways, you know, I'll find the pinion that matches. This has got 2 center punch marks on it, so let's go back to my 2 slot. And this just, there's holes in this center hub that these slip into. So there we go. It's a little springy because of hydraulic action. So I'm gonna move on to the next one here. I got a 3. That's my 1. So here's 3. Got little punch marks there. And go ahead and slip it into place. There we go. Same thing. A little bit of a spring to it because of the grease. It's hydraulic. And 1. Obviously there's 1 left. That's 1. So there we go. That slips into place right there. Okay. I got my backing plate here. And I've done the same thing with this. Cleaned it all up. Greased it really well. Cleaned it all up. Sprayed it out really well. Made sure there's no debris inside of it. And just threw some grease into these slots here. These slots keep the pinions from kind of climbing up on the gear teeth, which I know that they're supported on both ends, but you know, actually maybe it's just a clearance. It's a clearance cut. Yeah, never mind. Anyway, so I'm gonna put this back on here. Just lines up with these 3 holes. And there we go. So before I tighten this back plate down, I'm going to put my retaining pins in. And I'm just going to use a little bit of Loctite on these retaining pins. Blue Loctite. So I can get it back apart later if I need to. These just slip down in the holes here. And they lock. They lock these dogs in. Of course now it's giving me trouble. Now, let me go ahead and pop this back off. See what's going on here. Okay, there we go. I just had it pushed in too far. So, I'll do the same thing the rest of them. There. The titanium pins are in their place. I'm going to go ahead and just tighten them down. Now I'm going to check the action, see if it works smoothly, which it does. It's always a good thing. Now I'll go ahead and put the back plate on there. So there we go. The back plate. I've got 3 screws right here. I'm going to do the same thing. I'll dabble Loctite, keep them backing over on me. So, that's back together now. I'm going to go ahead and check the action on it again, make sure it's still smooth. And it is. Works very nice. Now that everything's all cleaned up, grit free, and has got some proper lubrication. So I'll go ahead and put my jaws back in there. And the jaws are numbered from the factory. Matching numbers numbered from the factory, matching their slots. So I can put those right back where they came from. Alright. And the scroll's already greased. I'm not going to put any grease on these. You know, well, you know, I want to, but I don't want to because I don't want chips and things to really stick in here. I think I'm going to just leave. I'll give it a very small film just to provide some slip, but I really don't want anything to stick. Just wipe out that excess. Alright, so find slot number 2 right here, and then I'll go ahead and spin the scroll around so that I can get this one caught. Alright, so make sure it's cleaned out. And drop it in place. And there we go. That one's in and it's caught. I'm gonna move on to the next one. Kind of a pain in the butt sometimes to catch these teeth. Alright, there we go. Okay, so I've got my number 2 jaw out, and I'm going to bring the scroll around to where I can see the beginning of the screw. There we go, right there. That's number 2. And then I'll spin it around and it's caught. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing again. Okay, so I've got all of my jaws in there now, and what I ended up doing, kind of like a fool, is I had number 2 and number 3 jaws switched, so that's why I couldn't get them to time up the right way. But I straightened them out. Now I'm going to go ahead and spin this thing all the way in, and just make sure that they all contact at the same time. So there we go. We get good contact all the way around on all 3. That's what I'm looking for. Alright. So now with the chuck taken care of, I can go ahead and begin work on making these adapter, well, this, whatever, depending on whether I have to use them both or not. But I can start working on that thing finally. So that is what I'm going to begin doing. Actually, I think I'm going to call this the end of this video. And you know, I've got kind of a bunch of fooling around to do with those discs right there before I can do any real fitting to the back of this. I'm going to use my rotary table that you see right there, and I'm gonna throw these plates on there, and I'll probably use an end mill on the rotary table, and what I'll do is I'll get this in there, and I'll go ahead and mark myself out the center of the part. I'll come in, I'll hit the center, then I'll come out by the radius, and I'll use an end mill to clean up the outside edge. I'm not worried about this hole. These are actually dropouts from CNC plasma from my local steel shop. That's what that hole is. That's the starting point of the plasma table. So these edges are probably, I mean, this is just mild steel, but the edges may be a little bit tough. I'm not sure. I'm going to use a carbide end mill on it, and I'm going to go in and just clean the edge up and make sure that this thing is completely round, and get it to the size that I want. And you know, once that's accomplished, I can go ahead and put my hole patterns into it to get onto the back of the chuck, and to put the pins in to get onto the lathe. So I'm going to call this video done, and when I actually get started on doing some work on this, I'll make another video of that. So for now, that's it, and I'll see you next time. Thank you.